Simple questions for 100 people. Welcome to our experiment. I am Bill Carell, and this is my investigation. I have simple questions for 100 people to research and gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. Now, the questions are fixed, and all interviews will remain consistent, with the variable being the actual participants themselves. So it's as if, Stuart, I'm asking you to come sit on my porch, and so I can learn about people. Okay, and
Okay.
we're really looking forward to what we'll discover when we're done. And I am very interested in you, the process, and your particular story. So, with that said, what is your full name?
My full name's Stuart Elliott, and I do have a middle name, but I never use it because my initials then become Smelliot. And at school, I didn't like that. My parents were a little bit
Yeah, kids
thoughtless
can
at
be
the
pretty
time.
cruel, can't they?
Yeah. So
So,
I'm always called Stuart Elliott.
was that a boarding school by any chance?
No, just normal school, regular school. But you know how
Excellent.
children are, they pick up on anything different, and we get sensitive.
I think it's a hand-me-down. Everybody gets their turn to be picked on, right?
Yeah, yeah, in some way, or but when it's our turn, it's no problem. To pick up someone else, it's no problem, is it?
Exactly. So, what is your favorite nickname that most people don't know?
I don't really have a favorite nickname. I have a pet name I don't like, and that's STU, Stew. And my sister used to use that, and it used to irritate the heck out of me. So I don't like people calling me that. But a lot of people try to call me that with as a short name, but I don't like it.
Yeah,
When I was, a teenager, I was called Ness, in relationship to Elliot Ness and that. But I grew out of that a long time ago.
yes. Yeah, that was a very good show, The
Hmm.
Untouched,
Yeah.
from the 1950s and early '60s, right?
Yep, that's show by age, eh?
And Me Too.
Uh-huh.
So, when did you first notice what color hair you had?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's something I was ever aware of. It was just there. Um, I suppose when I moved to Africa, I became more aware that my hair was getting bleached by the sun because I was, outside a lot, and the sun in Africa is very, very powerful. And I moved there in '86. I did an overland trip. But talking of hair, the one thing I remember that at the very beginning of this overland trip was I was sat on top of this vehicle outside, and it was in the Kalahari Desert. And I didn't know and didn't think about sunburn on my scalp, but it started getting sore. And the next day or the day after, I combed my hair and all my dead skin on my scalp came
Oh,
off.
no.
Yeah, so I thought, oh yeah, yeah, because I'm on top of this vehicle, and we're driving through the desert, and the wind's blowing the hair, so now it's not protecting me anymore. So that was an interesting little uh, incident that happened about hair. But I think the thing, it was really more that it was changing color, because of the African sun and the bleaching effect it had.
Sure. Yes, and to let our, folks at home in on a little bit of a secret here, you and I are communicating halfway across the world. You are in China, and I am
Hmm.
currently, in Connecticut, United States. So, the other part of this story that's kinda cool, not only did you notice that your scalp could get burned in Africa, but you're also in
Hmm.
a pretty interesting place right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's very picturesque, very beautiful.
It looks marvelous. So, on to the next question. What is your
Mhm.
favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
To intentionally waste time, I don't think it's an intention. It's a subconscious intention because that is a way of procrastinating, isn't it? And sometimes it's reading the news. Sometimes it's just idly surfing. Um, it's just generally, shall we say, research, but not specific research. Just finding out so that I've got more general info to talk and use in discussion.
interesting things that you stumble over when you're what's that song that, Prince said? Doing next to nothing? Doing
Yeah.
something next to nothing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a few of us that probably do a little bit of surfing to pick up little tidbits as well.
I think, I think it's an unconscious thing we just do. We just get curious, don't we? And then we just follow this and follow that, and before we know it, an hour, two, or whatever's gone. What have you been doing? Nothing.
Turns out that's just what those rascals want us to do.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
So, what is your favorite movie to watch alone?
Movie to watch alone. I suppose at the moment, the thing that comes to mind is The Lord of the Rings, not the Amazon version, but the other version. Um, It was made in by what's it? What 10, 20 years ago by that gentleman in New Zealand.
Yep.
That book always stood out for me when I was a teenager, and I've read it about 10 times. And that was the first depiction of the book that I ever saw that had any sense into it. And they are 3-hour epics, the films, but they're not films that my wife would like, so I'd rather watch it alone. But there's other movies, or not movies, but other things I love to watch are nature shows about Africa. I love African nature. I've spent a lot of time in the wilds of Africa, and I can watch those until the cows come home.
Yeah. That's it's fascinating, and I wonder how does it make you feel, watching those videos and knowing that now Africa is so far away?
Africa might be physically far away, but it's not far away in my mind. There's that connection always. But yeah, there's a longing to go back, but unfortunately, at the moment, I have to wait because number one, I'm over here, and number two, I've got two young children, 4 and 5.5, and I like to go into the wildest parts of Africa where there's no fences, where the animals can come and visit you at night time and sniff around your tent. Lions, I've had them sniffing around hyenas. I've been sniffed over by an elephant from head to foot. And I don't think the children are ready for that type of thing yet.
Yeah, and, I can imagine that there might be some other people that would take a dim view of that as well.
Yeah, so we have to wait a little bit, but I do want to introduce them to that type of thing. I don't like the organized safaris. It's too much like the tour guide. You get on the bus. We're going to see this place, this place, this place, and we rush between places to see this. There's no immersion. There's no experience really. I'd rather be there. I mean,
Yeah,
we met some people when we were camping in Botswana once, and we're in the Okavango Delta area, and we were talking to them, and they said they had a herd of elephants come through at night time, and one of them peed on the tent. You can imagine that was quite an experience for them.
great story for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, there's a lot of water comes down there.
I would
That's
imagine. Big beasts.
yeah.
So, if you were to have an action figure made of you, Stuart, what superpower would it have, and what colors would its uniform be?
I like the natural colors of nature, so something along those. But I suppose the ability to be clairvoyant, if you like, be able to connect on a deeper level rather than just the surface level of words.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the experiences I've had with wild animals have been on that deep level where there's been that sort of communication, but there's no word spoken, obviously. Yeah.
right.
And that reminds me of a story of not a story, a true incident. I was on a game ranger training course in the Eastern Transvaal in South Africa. And the gentleman who was taking it, he was so connected to animals that he would be talking to you just like we're talking. And then he'd just stop and he'd just look up at the tree and there's a bird in the tree and he'd have a conversation with the bird. He'd go, and the bird would answer back. They'd have a couple of minute conversation. Then they'd just carry on where they left off with us. That is a power that is something special if you can do that.
Definitely sounds like a power worth having.
Yeah.
So, what did you wanna be when you grew up, you were 5 years old?
When I was 5 years old, I have no recollection of wanting to be anything apart from just me and play. There's nothing that I can think of that comes to mind about that.
And interesting. You might
Mm.
be the first one that I've interviewed so far that didn't have something that they aspired to when they were 5.
Yeah, I don't. There's nothing that comes to mind, so it might be a hidden secret.
Perfect. Who knows? Maybe you haven't experienced it yet.
Yep, this is it. Yeah.
And what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
Discovering me and my ability to help people. It's taken a lifetime journey to do that, but it's become a natural progress. I mean, when I came to China, the reason I came to China was everything. I was living in South Africa at the time, and I've been there nearly 20 years. I was born in the UK, moved there, and then things started falling apart. And I was offered an opportunity to come to China to teach English as a second language. And the only question I had was whether it's north or south, because the north is too cold. I'm not interested. The south is okay. They
Yeah.
said, yeah, this is south of China. So I said, yes, I came here. And through my teaching journey, I evolved as a person and had this ability to connect to the students and really, give them a lot of value. I had the highest retention rates. I had the highest scores, and I had, just such a good connection with the students. I didn't know what it was, and through that journey, I went to the UK to study NLP with John Grinder, who's one of the co-founders. And then a little bit later, I went to Amsterdam to study conversational hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And somewhere along the way, I discovered what I was doing. I just suddenly said, now I know what I'm doing. And then when I got back and I moved schools to a private school. I was working with more young adults and early, 30s, 40s adults who wanted to emigrate to America, Canada, etc., or come study overseas or something along those lines. They were doing business, and they had a high enough level of English to have a conversation. And then the private classes, the one-on-one classes, became life coaching sessions. It became therapy sessions
Mhm.
because that was just a natural progression, and that was the big moment that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's been a whole journey, from a teenager to where I am now, and all the life experience that I've had has suddenly opened up into, yeah, this is it, this is the thing. And when I help people and they smile from the heart, that's the biggest reward there is. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how life takes us on journeys sometimes.
You I remember a very famous saying, that a man said, "The 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and then the day you find out why."
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you are a blessed human being and you've got a strong connection with the value you bring to humanity, and what it's a unique gift that you alone can bring.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people they spend a lot of time and energy looking rather than just experiencing it and allow it to be shown to them.
Yeah,
Because the more we try to look for something, it's like your glasses that you put on the top of your head and you can't find them. You're looking everywhere, you can't find them.
yeah,
But when you just stop, they suddenly appear.
it's amazing. And, as you get older, that happens more frequently.
What, the glasses? Or we just stop and things come to us.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, Stuart, who is your favorite person to listen to?
I would say the first person that comes to mind is Jim Rohn, the motivational speaker who passed away a couple of years ago. I was fortunate to see him live when I was in South Africa, and that was just one of the most interesting periods there. It was really beautiful. He has a special way of communicating messages, and he has an immense power over the audience. Basically had the whole audience in the palm of his hand, and it was just like he was playing them, but not in a manipulative way, but in a very powerful, positive way. So that was really interesting to watch, and his sayings to me are so deep. So I think that's great.
I understand, and again, there are great speakers that know how to have a conversation with an entire
Hmm.
audience where everybody
Yeah.
in the room is included, and he was very
Hmm.
powerful in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way he used his voice control. He'd be talking to you, and then he'd just drop his voice, and everybody would lean forward on the edge of their chairs to catch it. You could just see it. And I remember an article or story about when he was, getting ready to move on. and he said he was very, very upset, shall we say. I can't remember the exact wording he used, that everyone else was so miserable. He said, I'm going on the next stage of my journey. You should be celebrating with me.
Yeah.
Instead of being sad, and that was a very interesting statement.
It's the difference between people who accept what life gives them and the people that generate life. He
Yeah,
was definitely a generator, wasn't he?
yeah, he was very special. He still is really, because he's never left us really in that
As long as
respect.
we're talking about him, he's still here.
Yeah, so that's good.
And that's excellent. Please complete this sentence. When I grow up, I'd like to.
I'd like to be known to have helped lots of people connect to their inner happiness. That happiness that everyone's searching for outside is actually in you. And my calling is to help people to connect to that. And obviously, how I do that is part of my journey. So when I grow up, I would like to be known to have helped so many people.
That's a good thing to be known for.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, what is the most important thing in life to you right now?
my two children, definitely. They're 4, 5.5 years old. I've dedicated a lot of time to them to be there for them as a father, which I'm lucky enough to be able to do. Whereas a lot of people, they're too involved with their careers or work or just getting money and food on the table, and they don't have the time to spend, and really build a relationship with the children. So that is very, very important to me.
It's a good place to start, being
Hmm.
remembered for helping people.
Yeah, well, they help me a lot as well, so that's a good thing as well.
A and again, isn't that when life is the best, when you can't tell who's giving and who's receiving?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why they put there to teach us.
100%. And they don't quit, do they?
Oh, no, 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 no. Sometimes you wish they would, but no, it's actually great fun.
So the next question might sound a little bit like the one we were talking about before, but it's a little bit different. What would you
Mhm.
like to leave in the world after your life is done?
A legacy that's inspiring enough to activate the seeds of greatness within other people. So either through interviews like this, through podcasts, other podcasts, or even just writing or performing speeches, be remembered, just like we were talking about Jim Rohn, because he has that ability. So that's something that would be really nice to have that legacy, not just for my children, but for other people who, seek me out and are connected in that way and ready to hear the message I have to deliver in the way I deliver it.
If you could summarize your message in just a sentence or two, what would you say it is?
I'm known for helping people get out of their own way and connect to that inner passion and inner happiness so that they can live a life of fulfillment and powerful happiness.
I absolutely love that. We hear so many people, especially in the United States. You probably don't hear this in China much, but over here, the latest thing is for kids to find a job that they're passionate about. And I always chuckle, you know.
Mhm.
My favorite quote was, I think, Sam Snead, who said, "If you come to the golf course looking for your swing, you ain't gonna find it. You
No.
better walk on the course knowing what your swing is, and then work on making it perfect."
Yeah, well, when I was 15 and in school, we had the career guidance, that type of thing. And they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I've no idea. I want to do something with electricity."
Yeah.
And then ended up working for British Telecom. It was Post Office Telecoms at the time, and evolved into microwave radio, and that got me to Africa and a few other things. And here I am, as a hypnotic life coach, helping people. I would
It
never have known that back at then because I wasn't me then. I was somebody else, and my journey, a life journey, has opened so many opportunities, and I think that's important. Is very, very few people know what they want. I know of one person who, at 12 years old, was in the morgue doing postmortems on people because he was so convinced, he was so understanding that he was going to be a doctor. There's very few people who really have that understanding. I think a lot of people just follow a pathway and then evolve as we go along.
Yeah. It almost sounds to me like, you did a personal unlocking of your own passion and then
Oh
just
yeah.
brought that with you everywhere you went along the way.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I think it's about listening to yourself, isn't it?
as a matter of fact, it's about listening to yourself and those thoughts that move you ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Not
Out
in
of
I'm talking in the positive sense, not in the negative sense, which so many
100%.
people like to. Yeah.
We get to vote on about 80,000 thoughts a day, don't we?
Yeah, well, somebody said there's something like 4 million thoughts. I don't know how true that is, but there's a lot going on in our heads, that's for sure.
That sounds like a little one-upsmanship to me. I don't even know if you're talking about electrical impulses, I definitely
Mhm.
can I can definitely buy that. But the fact is there's more than 5. So
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a whole lot, and even 1,000 is a lot to get through.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The next question is the last one I have for you, and I call it the baker's question. Over
Hmm.
here, if you go to a good bakery and you order a
Hmm.
dozen donuts or you order a dozen rolls or something like that, the baker throws in a 13th one for free. And that's
Hmm.
what the question is. What is the thing that most people misunderstand about you, Stuart?
I think the most misunderstood thing is the true person that's behind the exterior, and that's partly because I have been a shy person, and I didn't realize when I was a youngster and a teenager how that was actually a training thing for me to be observant, to be able to read people, to see people. It's only later as I got older that I've seen that, but it also meant I put on a front and have developed also did at that time develop a skill to do that. So people don't always read it. They see my face and they think he's miserable. What's wrong with him? And no, it's nothing there. It's not that. But I'm a quiet person until I get to know somebody, and once I get on, we get past that icebreaker, and I feel I can trust them. Then I can open up and be like this. But that initial part, I think, is the secret that people don't see past.
I like that, and I know that in my observation of other people, that there are folks who just figure out a way to be invisible, or
Hmm.
they're making themselves as flat as possible to not have
Hmm.
any effect on their environment, and quite the opposite happens sometimes, as
Hmm.
opposed to uh, quietly blending in and being a fly on the wall, they sort of stick out because they're the only one not saying anything. So,
Yeah. Hmm. But
well,
as I say, when I was shy, I didn't realize it. I wanted people to come and talk to me. But it's only later that I realized how much training I had in observation and reading situations and people that gave me. And that's a skill, a superpower that I would never developed. And I'd like to pass that message on to anyone who's shy, that you're actually learning something by being shy. Just, go with it.
it's a great, great message for people, as
Hmm.
opposed to there's something wrong with being shy. I absolutely love
Yeah.
that message.
Hmm.
So that's all the questions I have for you for our science project here, if you will.
Hmm.
Do you have any questions of me, Stuart?
I'm just curious about your observations from the answers that you've had, obviously, with the people so far. And that's always interesting because they are um, different questions, but they're deep, but they're also respectful questions, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We devised these questions in such a way that almost anyone would be completely comfortable sharing themselves, that it wouldn't give
Hmm.
away too many family secrets or that sort of thing. But
Hmm.
in answer to your question, what I have seen and the suspicion that I had before I got started was the uh, the effort to divide people into groups
Hmm.
by what they physically looked like, or what their gender is, or your nationality, or any of those things. I just had
Hmm.
this sneaking suspicion that at their core, human beings are just basically good. And
Hmm.
no matter, and if you can strip all that other stuff away, like you said before, making yourself into a bit of an actor, as a shy person, Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of people do that too. They pick a persona that they think will move them further in the world. But the neat part
Mhm.
of it is when you strip all that away and just ask them fundamental questions, then they realize, then they take a moment to think about it, and they genuinely answer the questions. It's a very nice gift, to
Mhm.
hear what people actually do think and what their retrospect is with regard to things that happened to them in their life, and what's the most
Mhm.
important thing in the world. And what I'm seeing so far is the bell curve is pretty tight. That
Mhm.
most human beings are wired in a very similar fashion, and I
Mhm.
like that. I mean, that puts my trust in humanity, a notch or two higher than it has been over the COVID period when we were all
Mhm.
forced to kind of sequester and stay away from each other. That's a good question.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When I was traveling through Africa, I did an overland trip through Africa, and the people who had the least to me at that time were the happiest people. They were the most beautiful and most honest people
Yeah,
because they weren't involved in all the subterfuge which we've created, you know, I think from ego and other places. And if you can get past that, I mean, someone gave me a very interesting expression when I was a youngster. It says, whether it's the government, whether it's the bank manager or whatever, when they go to the toilet, the poo still smells the same as yours, which means that they're still at the heart real people.
it's very graphic and I think probably virtually true.
It is, but it just shows you, we're not that different. We just create these things, and then we get too involved in them. And if we, I mean, for instance, you get take a CEO of a company. He's so involved in his business, and he's lost himself because he's become his position.
Yes,
And then when he loses his job, he's got to reconnect and find out who he really is. And if he doesn't, he's gone. That's a shame. But if they could find themselves, then they realize that that was all nonsense.
agreed. And they never did really have a prayer of having self-expression and joy, trying to
Yeah,
be something as opposed to just being something that was coming from self-expression and joy. And let's see how that looks.
yeah. And that is a very powerful statement in itself. That I think that message needs to be on the top of every newspaper or something like that
Yeah,
because it's
it's like
true.
stop trying to figure it out and just get busy.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it?
We'll see how it
So
goes.
that's wonderful.
I
Hmm.
love this, Stuart. You and I are both the same types of people, very
Hmm.
interested in unlocking potential, and not necessarily because we see the potential to unlock, but sometimes the people we're working with and speaking to don't see the potential, and when they do, that is a very blessed moment, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I had a conversation with a lady the other day, and she said, "Look, I'm happy. I'm not unhappy." And then she proceeded to say, "I'm losing my two children." I said, "What?" No, they've grown up. They're 18 years old. They're moving on. They're getting their own jobs, their own lives. I've lost them. But she's not happy about that. I said, "Well, you've not lost them." It's just a phase that you've got to change, your circumstances now and build your life because your responsibilities have changed and that they need to be free. But I'm not unhappy.
Yeah.
People don't realize that they're not unhappy because they're locked in this pattern
The
and they just
need
keep
to
going through it. Yeah.
predicting how things are going to go so that they get a soft landing, having already
Yeah.
gone through the trauma.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's interesting when you have these conversations with people and you can get past all the nonsense and just have a real heart to heart. That's
Exactly.
something very special. And what you said, I mean, obviously, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in China, and I've had opportunities to have these real conversations, and people are not much different anywhere. I'll give you, a very interesting story. When I was in Kenya, we were sat around a campfire in the middle of the bush near Masai Mara Game Reserve. And three Maasai warriors just appeared in the night. It just appeared from nowhere. And they were very respectful, honorable people talking. They just had a conversation. And I had at that time a fixation to get a Maasai spear. And I'd been in Nairobi and they were too expensive in all the tourist shops. So I thought, this is my chance to barter.
Yeah.
So I had this special calculator because this was back in '86 when calculators were a big thing, scientific calculator, and I thought this is it, this is my opportunity. So I got it out of the tent and I showed it to him, and he played with it and did some calculations. I said, "Wow, this is wonderful. What use is it to me here?" What a message. What a beautiful way to put it. And I just wanted to shrivel up because I hadn't considered anything. Number one, I hadn't considered how difficult it would be to get another one. I
Yeah.
hadn't considered his position, his role, his, duties, everything else. And I hadn't considered anything about him. It was all about me. But he
Yeah.
was so respectful as a person to be able to put it across in a way that it hurt because, I was the one who's at fault. But it was such a wonderful way to do it. He wasn't angry, he wasn't cross, he was just so honorable about it. It was beautiful. It was a really beautiful experience afterwards when I actually thought about it. It taught me a lot. But
It's
it
quite
just shows
remarkable.
you how diverse we are and how similar we can be.
I also get the feeling that there's a little bit of a nod to how we were all trained to not speak the obvious,
Yeah.
like to step around, and make a dance out of that whole thing. And what's
Hmm.
the first thing out of his mouth? What use is this to me?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was very direct. But the thing that gets me afterwards is the respect he still kept for himself and for me. He wasn't antagonized. He wasn't looking down at me. He wasn't anything. He was just him. And that was very, very powerful. It took a long while for me to really connect to that message because I had to get past my own idiocy and my own ego and everything else. But again, these lessons happen to us and they're there for us at the right time. They come back and we see the full importance of them.
100%. Well, with that said, it's been a remarkable half hour or
Hmm.
so with you, Stuart. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it will go
We're
on forever if we don't stop.
exactly. We definitely have struck up a friendship. So,
Yeah.
with that said, I want to be mindful of our folks that are listening at home. We do this
Hmm.
for you. We want you to have the opportunity to not have to go out and interview 100 people, but at the
Hmm.
same time, have the opportunity to meet 100 new people and see what folks are saying. In the
Hmm.
meantime, it's a great, great life. And Simple Questions for 100 People will go on. And thank you for your participation, Stuart Elliott. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you a little bit.
It's a pleasure. It's been wonderful, and hopefully, someone can get some nuggets of wisdom from this and help them to move on in their lives.
I'm sure they will. And thank you again, my
Hmm.
friend. Bye
Okay.
bye for now.
Bye bye now. Ciao.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.